Pastor Sam, drop the call.
Okay, so this time my people have come again to present another program to you of how our independence was compromised. And I said that the French have absolute 100% total control of La République du Cameroon, and we blindly joined them thinking that we have a level of independence, and they have done everything possible to confiscate and totally destroy our sense of independence and make us also subjugated like their citizens to the French. And that is the dilemma that we are dealing with. Just as a small reminder before I continue the program, an image of Issa Chiroma, who is running around as a presidential candidate against Biya. You see him with a French ambassador. If we can put that picture of Issa Chiroma, this is Issa Chiroma with that French ambassador who was a military general. He went to get instructions from this ambassador before he started running for president. Right now, he's making noise that he's running for president, but he's doing what the French have told him to do. The French control from behind. This is just a little small example that I'm showing. But now I want to go in detail to explain how our independence was confiscated. And Ahidjo is the one that the French were using. Remember, I said earlier that before La République du Cameroon got their independence, Ahidjo had to sign an agreement with the French a week before of 11 points. And we came blindly thinking we were joining them in spite of the fake promises of Ahidjo. We thought they were authentic, but they were not. We came and joined them, as you see Foncha here talking with Ahidjo in this Fumban conference. And now I want to go in detail of how Ahidjo systematically destroyed this very agreement that he had made in front of the UN Decolonization Council as well as at Fumban, and got us to where we are today. So the destruction of Southern Cameroon's, known as then as West Cameroon, institutions were accelerated when Amadou Ahidjo, in collaboration with Emmanuel Tabi Egber and Solomon Tandeng Muna, with instructions from the French presidency of the Elysee, schemed and got the last stumbling block, Ngomjoa, out of government on January 12th of 1968. That means the French, using bribery and corruption, co-opted Tandeng Muna and Egwetabi to collaborate with them to get rid of our prime minister. Remember, Ahidjo had promised that we will keep our form of government and our prime minister. So they schemed with Muna and got Ngomjoa out on January 12th of 1968. It should be recalled that the process began in earnest when Amadou Ahidjo used Dr. E.M.L. Endele. Remember, I had said in a previous program that nobody has clean hands here. They use bribery and corruption. When you see a lot of money, they come and give you a large sum of envelope, even though it's a peanut compared to what is your birthright. Some people think that they are doing fine because they're driving a Mercedes and they can buy any kind of clothing they like or things that they think that they want, build a house that they want. So they think that they are better off. So even Ndele himself was compromised. So using Ndele, they proposed the dissolution of all political parties and the creation of a single national party. That was in 1966. Did anybody know that Ndele participated in this process? All political parties in the two Cameroons were effectively dissolved except that of Amadou Ahidjo. So Ahidjo then, at that time, there was the Cold War. You had the Soviet Union trying to spread communism around the world, and of course the Western nations led by the United States and the European allies trying to control the rest of the world for our resources, like I said before. And so they used that, basically that threat of communism to say that, well, democracy is dangerous, and so let's just form only one political party. And they used Ndele to propose that. I don't know what he received for an envelope, but I suspect there was. So the idea bandit then was to have a new party that would unite all Cameroonian parties, the former British Southern Cameroonian parties and Eastern Cameroonian parties. Of course, that wasn't true. There was a hidden agenda. Amadou Ahidjo wanted to have a complete and firm grip on the two Cameroons. He simply added national to his own Union Camerounese. When Ahidjo came to power, they had different political parties in East Cameroon. His own party from the north was called Union Camerounese. And then you had Mbida and others, they had their own. So he pretended and just added national. So Union, it was still his Union National. And remember that they had changed it to CBDM in Bamida. It's still the same. And changing its skin is not. So to the Cameroonese, and it became the Union Nationale Camerounese, or in English, the CNU, the Cameroon National Union. Ahidjo's Union Camerounese, known only in his own country, cunningly dissolved others, crossed over the Mongo Bridge, and martyred them and became the only national party even in English Cameroon. All those who had dissolved their parties were then appointed section presidents. If you had a political party and you agreed to dissolve yours, they immediately make you a section president. Central committee members, Politburo members, etc. Even influential personalities of West Cameroon extraction were appointed into the Central Committee. The president of West Cameroon Trade Union Congress was forced into the CNU. This scheme was officialized on 1st September 1966, when the CNU became the only legal political party in both West and East Cameroon, and all other parties were banned. The same year in 1966, the plebiscite day, which we used to celebrate, the day that they told us to vote either to join Nigeria or La République du Cameroon, which was on 11th February, and we used to celebrate it, they transformed it into a youth day, which they still try to do till today. That was an important date that we made a major decision concerning our future, forced to do so. So they changed it into a youth day, and that it should be celebrated across the Mongo, that is also in East Cameroon. Having illegally and unconstitutionally appointed Solomon Tandeng Muna. Now, I'll come to this to explain how it happened. In our tradition in West Cameroon, we used to vote for political party platforms. That means a political party will propose what they will do for the welfare of the people. And if we believe that a political party had the right program to help the interest of the people, they voted for the party platform. And the leader of that party, the party that wins the majority, becomes the prime minister. So you became prime minister by being the leader of a party that won the majority. That's what you see in Britain and in Anglo-Saxon nations. Now, so in our case, Foncha was leading when we acquired independence. And then when Foncha went to Yaoundé to become vice president, his replacement from the same party was Ngomjua. And now Muna was not a member of that political party and was not the leader of the party. So they schemed, having been instructed from the Elysee, like I read above, and put Muna as Prime Minister of West Cameroon by imposition, aside from our customary practice of choosing the leaders of a political party. So having illegally and unconstitutionally appointed Solomon Tandeng Muna as Prime Minister of West Cameroon, the stage was gradually being set for the total annexation of Southern Cameroons. Ahidjo's comrade in destruction, a West Cameroonian, Solomon Tandeng Muna, couldn't muster the courage to live in Boya because of the way he became Prime Minister. The Prime Minister was living in the Prime Minister's lodge, but he was voted in a way that we don't do it. So he ran and was living in Yaoundé. And his children have continued the charade. That's why his son is pretending to run for president of La République du Cameroon, even though they know that the French have sworn that an English-speaking person will never, ever be president of La République du Cameroon. So he ran. So, first and foremost, he wasn't eligible to be prime minister because he wasn't a member of parliament. Take note of the fact that we were operating Westminster-like parliamentary system of government at that time. Only an MP or member of parliament could be voted a prime minister. When Ahidjo announced that he had appointed Solomon Tandeng Muna to replace Augustin Ngomjua, West Cameroon members of parliament booed and jeered at him because that was a traitor. And that practice has continued to today. They keep appointing people. They never give the people the chance to choose their leaders. Whether it's you call him a governor or a DO or whatever, Biya just keeps appointing directed from the French presidency in Élysée in Paris. Despite his shameless treachery, his conscience troubled him and he felt uncomfortable living in Buea. He vamoosed to Yaoundé. It's worth mentioning that this was the first move by Ahidjo and Muna towards the total eradication of West Cameroonian institutions. 2 years later, that is in 1970, the French Secret Service got ample intelligence that frustration, hopelessness, anger, and discontent were increasingly growing amongst the Southern Cameroonians. You know it. You feel this frustration of what La République is doing to us. And we have always had eruptions, like when Frundi came up. But this started even then, before 1970. So the French Secret Service noticed that there was frustration and hopelessness, anger, and discontent that was increasing in our region. And as a result of mismanagement of Federal Republic of Cameroon. Secondly, crude oil was discovered in Dian. So they discovered that there was a lot of oil in Dian. There's another twist to this. That is the same time that they started the Biafran War. The French realized that not only is oil in southern Cameroon, but there was oil in the eastern side of Nigeria where there is a lot of oil there, Igbo land and the Port Harcourt region. So the French tried to carve out Biafra line by making the Igbos fight for their freedom. And Ojukwu ran to Gabon and was directing the war from Nigeria, from Gabon. So it was the French that instigated that war and financed it in order to carve out that oil-rich area and take control of it. And when they did not succeed, they have gone behind the scenes and made agreements with the Muslims in the north and are still controlling the oil and refining it in Nigeria. That is a different story. But they discovered oil in southern Cameroon, in Dian. With the discovery of crude oil, the French and Amadou Ahidjo hurriedly harnessed their plans of assimilation and absorption of West Cameroon into La République du Cameroun. They wanted to have a firm grip on West Cameroon so as to exploit these resources unperturbed. Thus, any form of federalism would have to be done with. They have to take it away. No more federalism. Therefore, between 1970 and 1972, Amadou Ahidjo, via his comrade in destruction, Solomon Tandeng Muna, made life more difficult for Southern Cameroonians. They kept giving one reason or the other why the federation was an impediment to the progress and development of the two federated states. They argued that the federal system was bureaucratic, cumbersome, and above all, anti-developmental. Meanwhile, in 1970, John Gu Foncha, who was vice president to Ahidjo, was finally dismissed and replaced with Solomon Tandeng Muna. So remember that Ayuktabe and Muna were working with the French as traitors, and they have connived. And Foncha, who sat in that picture you saw with Ahidjo in Fumban talking how we would merge, was now pushed away in 1970. So Muna cumulatively was Prime Minister of West Cameroon and at the same time Vice President of the Federal Republic of Cameroon. He occupied now two positions, taking Fonchas and then also calling himself Prime Minister of West Cameroon. We should not forget that one of the reasons Prime Minister Joa got elected into office as Prime Minister of West Cameroon in replacement of John Gu Foncha was because he couldn't cumulate posts of Prime Minister and Vice President respectively. That means he was forbidden to occupy two posts at the same time. But this traitor, Solomon Tandeng Muna, was allowed to occupy two positions at the same time. Vice President of the Republic and Prime Minister of West Cameroon. And eventually they will reward him with even the position of Speaker of the National Assembly. It should be noted here that after having used and politically neutralized John Gu Foncha, Amadou Ahidjo finally dumped him. His political career effectively ended in 1970. Needless to bother ourselves about the nomenclature he carried on about ceremoniously as the first national vice president of the Union National or the CNU, which later in 1985 was renamed the CPDM. As I mentioned earlier, the French and Amadou Ahidjo had worked on the psychology of certain Cameroonians. They were told that their lives would be better if the president has more powers and could intervene and act on issues without passing through cumbersome and bureaucratic nature of the different federated states. Let our people know that the Federal Republic of Cameroon has inter alia in Cameroon Oriental or East Cameroon, their House of Assembly, and in West Cameroon, the House of Chiefs, as well as the House of Assembly. There was also a Federal National Assembly whose members were elected from the two different Cameroons. Ahidjo and Muna insisted that if all these houses, chiefs, West and Cameroon were dissolved, life would be better. Civil servants' salaries shall be increased. Projects shall be realized without much ado, etc. That's what they said. Remember that this day we have social media. We have cell phones in our hands replacing our televisions. In fact, the cell phone can do almost anything now. We don't need even the telephone, because the cell phone, it becomes the telephone, it becomes the television, and their connection to the internet and everything. In those days, people were dependent only on a crude radio and newspapers like Cameroon Tribune. And these people were conspiring to destroy our own life as we know it and our future when Muna was working with the French. At the beginning of May 1972, Amadou Ahidjo had traveled to France. He surely went to update the Elysee, to give updates to the French president how much progress they had made, and surely opined to them that the time was now right to act. So he returned to Yaoundé on May 5th. Remember that they celebrate 20th May as the day of National Day of Cameroon. On May 5th, 1972, he returned to Yaoundé after talking with the French president. The vice president of He immediately summoned former vice president of the Federation, John Foncha, to his office, because that's the person he had pledged to. He told him that he had made up his mind to dissolve the Federation. That's what Ahidjo said. He said, I have made up my mind to dissolve the Federation. Basically, he's acting on instructions of the French president. And at that time, it was Pompidou. You had Charles de Gaulle, who passed it to Pompidou, and then he passed it to Giscard d'Estaing, and then Giscard d'Estaing passed it to Mitterrand, and then Mitterrand passed it to Jacques Chirac. Jacques Chirac passed it to Sarkozy, and Sarkozy passed it to Hollande, and then Hollande had passed it to Macron. Those are the French presidents that I just gave you. So he said he had made up his mind to get rid of it. John Foncha argued and rejected the idea, reminding Ahidjo that any dissolution of the Federation was against what they had agreed in Fumban, which was enshrined in the Federal Constitution. It stated in Section 47 that any proposal for the revision of the present Constitution, which impairs the unity and integrity of the Federation, shall be inadmissible. This portion has been misappropriated by Biya, who never made any promise, was never at the very beginning, to claim that the twisted constitution can never be changed so that they can continue doing their mischief. Now, he further told Ahidjo that he was going to meet with his people for them to collectively oppose it. Ahidjo looked at him and laughed because Ahidjo had bribed the others, crossed his legs, and asked which people is he talking about. In order to end the discussion, Ahidjo reminded Foncha that he is done with him and he should leave his office. He despised him and treated him like a little boy. He had given envelopes to the other people like the Munas and the Egbers and others. Leaving Ahidjo's office with anger, John Foncha invited his brothers, he thought they were his brothers, to meet and take a common stand on how to stop Ahidjo from dissolving the Federation. In course of their meeting, he discovered that Ahidjo had touched, that means bribed, and possibly oiled the lips. That means he gave them oil, mimbo, of almost everyone. He had bribed everyone. Same practice La Republic does to this day. They give bribes to the chiefs, they give bribes to anybody to compromise them, just so they can keep us, to continually extort us and carry away our resources and impoverish our people. He, Foncha, found himself alone and so could not mount any opposition in rejecting Ahidjo's peaceful revolution project. After having managed to neutralize everyone, Ahidjo convened the Assemblée Nationale du Cameroon. He convened the National Assembly. Remember, it's a rubber stamp place. They don't debate anything. On May 6th, remember he came back on the 5th, called for Muna Foncha and talked to him and threw him out of the office. On May 6, 1972, in his speech, he enumerated all the purported ills found in the federal constitution and then averred, j'ai décidé de mettre fin à la fédération. Say, I have decided to put an end to federation. Loosely translated in English as I have decided to put an end to the federation. He then scheduled a referendum 2 weeks later. That is on 20th May 1972. No one knew what was going to happen. Vice President Solomon Tandeng Muna was appointed as the campaign manager. They always use Anglophones as their campaign managers. So Tandeng Muna was the campaign manager for the so-called charade, or the so-called referendum of 1972. Just like they use Achidia Chu, they use the so-called English prime ministers for campaign managing. This time they're despising Diombute and using his Secretary General. They have reached a level where they don't need to fear any Anglophone anymore. They don't need to worry. So they just use the other one that they want to, they gave signatures to him to be signing. So neither Solomon Tandeng Muna nor any other close ally of Ahidjo knew what he, Ahidjo, had up in his sleeve. So even what Ahidjo was doing, he was hiding from this traitor, Muna. They went around selling an unknown product called Unitary System of Government. They lied to the people that the unitary system was better than federation as it was going to bring government nearer to the people. It is noteworthy to mention that no one knew what was going to be on the ballot. Nobody knew. On the Federation Day proper, that means on 20th May, which they celebrate as a national day, our people saw this infamous ballot. Do you wish to? And the answer was oui in French, which means yes, or yes in English. There was no. There wasn't a ballot for none or no. If you were to vote against, and they will kill you if you didn't produce documents to show that you voted. Let me say in passing that some Cameroonians have claimed on the media that there was a none or no ballot, but none has been able to show proof. If you find one, bring it. There is none. Those who dared ask or question the process or ask the other ballot paper were immediately silenced. That means they were killed. Barrister Timothy Mbeseha and one of our fathers here, and Ndangam, who witnessed the charade on that day, are alive and strong, and they can testify. And those of many other of our people who were alive, they can testify. They can testify more on Ahidjo's peaceful revolution, which was more or less the annexation and for total absorption of the Southern Cameroons into La République du Cameroun. After the charade in the name of a referendum, Ahidjo divided the two Cameroons into 7 provinces. He now divided his part into 5 provinces, which were the western region was divided into 2 to be called Northwest and Southwest. That means the West Cameroon, the English portion was now called Northwest and Southwest provinces of the United Republic of Cameroon. Since it's difficult to completely bury the truth, Amadou Ahidjo came up with a new name to identify the people of the former British Southern Cameroons. He started calling them Anglophones. And now, the Chancellor of Universities claims that anybody who speaks any English is an Anglophone. So if you go and get a pygmy from Yokaduma speaking English, then that is an Anglophone. So just to neutralize us. But we are speaking of the indigenous children whose great-great-grandparents migrated, settled in the former British Southern Cameroon in what is called Northwest and Southwest regions, who were born there. Their navels were cut and planted under a plantain sucker. Those are the people we are talking about. Not anybody who speaks English even better than the Queen or the King of England. You can speak better than the Queen or King of England. Remember that there are dialects, there are accents. So English is not like the same everywhere. So the fact that you speak some English does not mean that you are from the territory of the former British Southern Cameroon, which we call Ambazonia. And I have described that when Alfred Secker landed in 1858 he saw this territory, put his capital in Victoria, and he wanted that territory of the Ambas Bay to be called the British Protectorate of the Ambas Bay. That's why the name Ambazonia comes from. So you hear some foolish, uneducated Anglophone, Francophones, French from French that we're calling us Ambazozos, because they're not educated. But that's where the name comes from the Ambas Bay, which is not far from Bakassi. And so Afeseka called it the British Protectorate of the Ambas Bay region. And that's where that name comes from. If you didn't know that, learn that today. So since it's difficult to completely bury the truth, Amadou Ahidjo started calling us Anglophones, Francophones. So our people moved from Southern Cameroon to West Cameroon in 1972, and now we're being called Anglophones. So I want to look and give you the details of all the tricks that Ahidjo brought to compromise our independence. So, since it's difficult to completely do this, so that's how they compromise that. The whole idea of Amadou Ahidjo replacing the federal system of government with a unitary one was to subterfuge aimed at nibbing the bud of any secessionist tendencies or people might have had as a result of the way the federation was being managed. That's all he was wanting. He had to justify it how the four houses of assemblies were eating a good chunk of the mega national budget, thereby impeding development. Guess what? Ahidjo's new National Assembly was more expensive than the four houses put together. And remember that just the British Southern Cameroon produced 60% of the national budget of that country. Without the British Southern Cameroon, East Cameroon crumbles, even though they are a wealthy nation, because of corruption. In a nutshell, Amadou Ahidjo had no intention of bringing development nearer to the people, but had the sole objective of absorbing Southern Cameroon into La République du Cameroon, more so because of its natural resources. This is all that is about. The French wanted to control their colonies and have all their money and their natural resources. And so La République du Cameroon, guided by the French, are doing all the mischief and wickedness to us because of their natural resources in West Cameroon. They don't love anyone, nobody. They want the things. So, if Southern Cameroon was like Chad or Central African Republic, Ahidjo would not have bothered about them uniting or federating with them. Needless to mention that La République du Cameroon, so I will leave it right here and continue speaking spontaneously. But basically, you see how Ahidjo compromised our independence. And he got us to the point where basically we lost our benefits of being totally independent and developing ourselves. All the experience we had gathered when we settled in Boya and started developing our roads and infrastructures. We had PWD, if I keep naming them, we'll forget something. All of them were now gone. And Ahidjo basically killed it. It was led by the French. They wanted to kill anything English so that we will be absorbed totally by the Republic of Cameroon and transform our education system to look like theirs. That's why in 1985 they even wanted to get rid of the GCE so that we will only be speaking in French. So now I want to go and show how even Muna, who went and collaborated with La République du Cameroon to compromise our independence, was tricked. Basically, they had tricked him, deceived him to take Foncha's place as vice president, to take Joa's place as prime minister, and Ahidjo was deceiving him that if something happened to the presidency, Muna will take over. So that's why Muna was collaborating with them. But with time, the French, who were behind the scenes controlling every action and had prepared Biya from his youth to use, he was compromised. His father was a priest, and I don't want to go into pedophilia and how he was molested homosexually there, to humiliate him so that he will be submissive, which is what they do. Once they have humiliated you, you listen to them and do what they tell you. They did that to him. Jacques Foccart and Mesmer and all those people, they prepared him. So now they use him to replace Muna and push him. And I will tell you now how it happened. So, while since the reunification of October 1, 1961, with the establishment of the federal constitution itself replaced the constitution of the United States of the United Country, English-speaking people occupy an important place in the heart of the institution. And the agreement was that if the president comes from one side, the vice will come from the other. That means the second highest personality will come from the other. Anglophone is the second personality of the country, vice president. The constitutional succession of the head of state of the republic, based on that constitution 1961, was as amended, was supposed to go over to an English-speaking person in case of vacation, if the president died or something happened to him and he couldn't rule anymore. But they started manipulating to replace the English speaking. And Muna was salivating, hoping that he would be the next after they had tricked and removed Frontier and removed Joa. So the constitutional interim head of state in the Constitution of June 2nd, 1972, in the Article 7, makes the president of the National Assembly the interim president of the Republic. And that's why Frontier Muna was now made the Speaker of the National Assembly. And so he was thinking that if Ahidjo is not there, he will be the person to become president. Solomon Tande Muna holds the position of Prime Minister of West Cameroon, Vice President of the Republic during the Federation, and then also President of the National Assembly. Can you imagine 3 positions? Under pressure from France, did you hear? Under pressure from France, who does not want an English-speaking leader in the event of the presidency becoming vacant. So forget about that Muna pretending to run for president. He can never be. Joshua Ossi, forget about him. He can never be. There is no English person. Frundi defeated them, hands down, and his victory was stolen. No English person will be accepted by those people, so forget about them. So under pressure from France, who did not want any English-speaking person to take lead in English Cameroon, Amadou Ahidjo made amendments to the constitution, creating the position of prime minister in 1975. Ahidjo is being guided here by the French, just like you take your pen to write a letter. The pen, you see the pen writing a letter, but it's the head directing the hand that uses the pen that makes the decision. The French are using Ahidjo here as the pen, just like they use Biya as the pen. It's the French orchestrating all the activities. So they used him to create a position of prime minister in 1975 and made Paul Biya on June 29th of 1979. They made the prime minister the constitutional successor. So that means Muna had been tricked to believe that being the Speaker of the National Assembly, he would become the next president if something happened to Ahidjo. But after putting Biya in there, the French told Ahidjo to change the constitution again and make the prime minister, which was Biya, to become the president in case of vacancy. Abolishing the interim president of the National Assembly, Solomon Tande Muna. On November 6, 1982, the French now tricked Ahidjo by telling him that he was too sick to be president and so he should hand over to the prime minister. And that's how Paul Biya became president of the republic following the resignation of Ahidjo on November 4th of 1982. This is one of the factors that triggered the English-speaking crisis. So you see that they tricked Muna, who collaborated with them, got money. His children are well educated, well placed. They don't lack food. They don't lack houses. They don't lack Mercedes cars or whatever you consider to be things that human beings need. Yes, and he occupied 3 positions: vice president, prime minister of West Cameroon, as well as Speaker of the National Assembly. He occupied all those important positions, and he was thinking it was just left for him to become president. Yet they tricked him and cut him short. That's what they do to English speaking. They deceive you, trick you, and then even finish you off. They did that to Frundi. Frundi won elections, and they tried to kill him, didn't succeed. They wooed him, got him to start dancing with them in Yaoundé. He thought he was now one with them. And then they finished him off, and now they go to his grave and throw some flowers there. So, on May 9th, amendment of the Constitution, creation of the post of the Prime Minister. This was following the adoption of Law Number 75-1 of May 9, amending the Constitution of June 1972 and creation of the position of Prime Minister. It was in fact an amendment to the Constitution of June 1972, the third that Cameroon has known. On June 29, 1979, amending the Constitution again and making the Prime Minister the constitutional successor. This was following the adoption of that law, amending the Constitution of 1972, making the Prime Minister the constitutional successor in case of vacancy or death. So Solomon Tanding Muna first, remember he was born in 1912, was there and used to be a minister in Nigeria before we left Enugu. He used to be a minister over there, but he was disappointed. And so he stayed until 2002 when he left, Prime Minister of Federal State of West Cameroon and all of this. So basically, that is how Ahidjo compromised our independence. And remember that it is the French doing this. After they have brought in their well-prepared individual, this Biya, then in 1984, Biya now literally reverted back to the name that Ahidjo carried them to Fumban with. That means Ahidjo met West Cameroon in Fumban as La République du Cameroun. And now that they have prepared Biya, used him throughout, and brought him to that position, they told him, just change the name to La République du Cameroun. And now that's why it's called Republic of Cameroon, La République du Cameroun. We're back to what they were before we met in Fumban. And Godji Dinka said, be logical with your decisions. And if you have reverted to what you were before we met in Fumban, it means that we are not part and parcel of you. So we are separate from you because before we met in Fumban, we were not what you're calling yourself now. So be logical, remove all your administrators to East Cameroon and leave us by our own side. And so we are now a true, free, and independent people. And La République did everything to kill Dinka and persecute him. And anybody who was talking like Abed Mukong, they killed him. They persecuted them, killed somebody in silence, which is their usual trick, in collaboration with the French. And so noticing the betrayal, the promises that were not kept, and all the bribery and corruption that occurred throughout time, and Biya reverting to what they were in 1984, we have the legal right in the universe of God's creation, in all true courts of good conscience, to consider ourselves free and liberated from La République du Cameroun. And now we come to the declaration of our independence that occurred on October 1 of 2017 by our former president Julius Ayuktabe, that Macron went and negotiated with Nigeria for La République du Cameroun to collaborate and pick him up, and now he's in La République du Cameroun jail. So if we can listen to that program, that presentation by Julius Ayuktabe, that is a legitimate declaration of our independence. The sound.
And we solemnly declare the restoration of the independence and the sovereign state of Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. Happy, free, and prosperous Southern Cameroons. I hereby declare open the commemoration of our independence restoration. God bless Southern Cameroons. God bless Ambazonia.
Amen. So this declaration by the former president Ayuktabe, who is now in Kondengi, and remember the French control everything from behind the scenes. What happened is Macron went to Abidjan in Ivory Coast, then took a short course to Nigeria, where you would think he's going for a discussion. When the budding government was in Nigeria, he went and negotiated with the Nigerian military to collaborate with La République du Cameroun to pick the government there. And so that's where Ayuktabe was picked, and he's in Kondengi. But I can guarantee you, in spite of all their efforts, it's not going to work, because the truth always prevails against falsehood. Daylight is stronger than nighttime. Light is stronger than darkness. Truth is stronger than falsehood. Good is stronger than bad. So the fact that La République seceded, BS seceded from the attempted union in 1984 by reverting to who they were means we are a free people. And this declaration is legally binding. It does not matter whether some countries have recognized us or not. You will realize that internationally, some countries, including Britain and France, have come out, and Canada, and recognizing Palestine as an independent state from the Jewish state that is trying to destroy them and annihilate them. But the United States is holding back and refusing to recognize Palestine. And because of that, it's difficult for Palestine to be actualized, partly because the US is very powerful and is behind Israel. And in fact, all the military equipment of the United States and their money belongs to Israel. They use it as like it's their purse. So because of that, that's why Israel is heady and does whatever they want. But whatever the case, I'm trying to say that the Palestinians have been recognized as independents by many stronger nations. The children of Amazonia have not yet been recognized as a nation. It does not make our case weaker. Our case is very strong as far as the God of the universe, the creator of everything that is known and unknown to human beings. And the fact that good is better than false than bad, that light is stronger than darkness. The fact that our case is that evident and strong, we are free and totally independent from La République du Cameroon, and with time, they will vanish from our territory. It's just a matter of time, and people will see it with their own very eyes and rejoice and praise God. And in fact, La République will do better with a free Amazonia living side by side with La République du Cameroon, because when Amazonia will be flourishing and growing exponentially, La République will learn from us and try to be like us and do better than they are doing right now. They cannot do anything good because they are held down by the French, as well as these stooges who only bent on embezzling and stealing and stashing in Switzerland and abroad and abandon the country. You don't see any roads. In fact, we don't even need to go and enumerate or show pictures because they are so disgraceful that anybody natural sees that they feel repugnant and wonder where that is, as if it's a different planet. It's very disgraceful. But when Amazonia is totally liberated and governed by Amazonian children who are very competent, it doesn't have to be us. It can be any Amazonian child who is well competent, like Charade is doing in Burkina Faso. Then you will see how the country will flourish and will do wonderfully well in the world and become a strong, mighty nation, because we are a blessed people. We are precious in God's sight, and that's how God regards us. And that's who we believe we are. Believe that you are precious. Consider yourself somebody unique, created by God for a purpose, unique purpose. Don't let anybody talk you down or deceive you that you are inferior. Like the Beti Bulus in their monument of how to conserve power have written how they undermine Anglophones, or as they call us, and how they will kill them, and that God has always killed people to regenerate, and they don't mind eliminating us, and they should not feel sorry for our people being killed. If people speak like that about you, why do you follow them? You don't need to follow them. They don't regard you as anything. But we are precious in God's eyes. Regard yourself as precious. The Bible says, love others as you love yourself. So you have to love yourself. Believe in yourself. Cherish yourself. If others don't trust yourself, cherish yourself. Regard yourself as somebody unique and special and gifted and great. And then others will see that that's who you are. And that's who the children of Amazonia are. Each one of them. Each one of them. And those who have taken the 30 pieces of silver, like Judas Iscariot, to collaborate with La République, will perish like Judas Iscariot. They will die. They will die off. And yet, the land will remain, the children of Amazonia will flourish and actualize their independence and be great in the earth. That's where I'm going to end this program today. Thank you very much. I just showed in brief how our independence was compromised. We will go into more details of other programs subsequently. Thank you very much.